Hey, good day and welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. Life gets busy, summer happens, so we appreciate your patience on waiting for this podcast, episode 38 of the show. I am your host, Johnny Soap, and alongside me, as always, my co-host, Robert Munich. How are we today, Robert?
Doing great, enjoying summer so far. Lots going on, and
Yeah.
we haven't spoken in a while. It's great to hear your voice and talk a little Flames hockey today.
I think we've rescheduled this episode about 3 or 4 times here because of how busy summer gets and how crazy life is. But it's awesome to be beside Robert, as always, and excited to talk about Flames hockey. Robert, it's been a while since we've had an episode here, so we're going to go all the way back to before the draft, before we got all these signings and free agency happened. Entering the draft, there was a lot of thoughts on Twitter about where the Flames should go with the draft pick, what Conroy should do. Trade this guy, trade that guy. If you can go back and remember your thoughts, what was your pre-draft thinking here headed into the draft? What things that Craig Conroy should be doing, could be doing, and things you were looking at the Flames doing?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, like always, all the NHL insiders are telling us that half the league's going to get traded. This guy's going to go here. This guy's going to go here. This is going to be the craziest draft of all time. There's going to be so much player movement. Nothing happens. You had the Noah Dobson move, and aside from that, like that was pretty much it in terms of like major big time trades. And the Calgary Flames were not involved in any of them. And quite honestly, it doesn't surprise me. Based off of what we heard, it kind of sounds like Craig Conroy was very active, like having a lot of conversations with guys, but ultimately couldn't get any deals done. And to be totally honest, that doesn't surprise me, just because the assets that the Flames had just didn't really match up very well with what other teams were looking for. So you hear insiders say that every team is looking to get better. No teams want to, make just like a strictly futures-based trade. Everyone wants to, trade player for player, the quote-unquote hockey trades. And quite honestly, with where the Flames are at, they don't really have the assets to make those kinds of deals, because the guys who you could make those deals with are guys who aren't even on the trade block and guys that they don't want to move.
Yeah.
Whether it's Nazem Kadri or Mackenzie Weegar, those are really, really valuable players. They don't want to move them right now, so nothing ended up happening. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You see like the price like Dobson went for. I don't think the Flames should have paid that. You see the price Keandre Miller went for. I don't think, in 2025 with where the Flames are right now, I don't think they should have been in on that either. And now there's a Bowen Byram conversation. So yeah, very quiet, not very, I'm not surprised by that. And I'm actually overall pretty happy that the Flames kind of stayed quiet through that period there.
I'm with you there, especially after the hear all this. Well, pick 4 could be moved, pick 9 could be moved. I wonder if pick 8's on the board. We could see maybe Pittsburgh moving down, and you got none of that. You got nothing really made. And that Dobson trade came well before the draft even happened. And so you're just looking at the draft board, and these teams go into there, and for a quote-unquote weaker draft, people were just not willing to move off their draft picks. So there's still some value that people saw in these players picked in the draft. And I like Craig Conroy kicking tires. You can kick the tires and you don't have to pull the trigger on trades, but you then can gauge value on players. And I think that was really smart by Conroy not to make a trade just to make a trade. We've seen that happen before. Brennan Bollig comes to mind, where you just make a trade to seemingly make a trade or make a move to make a move. Just be calculated. And I think that's really what we saw from Conroy on draft week into the draft and in draft weekend here. We'll talk about Rasmus Andersson at length a little bit later in the episode, but how surprised are you that no Rasmus Andersson move was made by the end of round 2 or 3 of the draft here, Robert?
I'm not surprised. Just based off of all the reporting and everything that you're reading and hearing, it really sounds like the Flames are not in a rush to make this move. I personally hope that Rasmus is traded before training camp. I don't think they need that whole scenario and distraction heading into camp. But, it sounds like a lot of teams made really good offers, but they were contingent on Rasmus signing an extension there. So, and he didn't want to do that at this time. So, yeah, it honestly doesn't really surprise me that he didn't get moved. You take a look around the league, like we talked about Dobson, but and we talked about Miller, but outside of that, there really hasn't been much transactions when it comes to defensemen around the league. So I'm honestly not surprised. And Conroy's been a very patient GM, and sometimes that's been really good, and sometimes not so much. So we'll see how this whole situation plays out. But yeah, I'm not very surprised. How about you?
There was a lot of smoke around Rasmus Andersson heading into the draft, so I was a little surprised nothing happened on night by night one. But as soon as the round one started, I wasn't surprised we didn't see one at all happen, just because we've seen the patience from Craig Conroy. And if you're going to move Rasmus for this draft, you obviously want that first round draft pick as part of that compensation for the player. So once the first round started, I'm like, okay, Rasmus is probably going to be sticking around for a couple more weeks here. And like you, I'm really hoping that by training camp this is resolved, because that's a whole nother can of worms that opens that up when we get to that point of the season. So another would be surprised once the first round started that Rasmus was still a member of the Flames, and we'll continually have those conversations.
Yeah, and then like another thing is just like around the NHL, all these GMs are so risk adverse. You know, a lot of these GMs, they don't like to make bold moves. They don't like to take risks. It's just kind of the way the NHL is. Like, it's quite honestly, I mean, it's just like completely the opposite compared to the NBA. I mean, you take a look at the NBA, it's just like major trade after major trade after major trade. We don't get that in the NHL because all these GMs, I think they're really worried about making a mistake and losing their jobs. So I think they try to be kind of as safe as possible, and it does make for some lackluster off seasons, to say the least. And I think we're kind of seeing that right now.
Yeah, we saw a lot of teams re-sign their own guys too, right?
Yeah.
Heading to the drafts, you saw a lot of re-signings. Really, there's only a handful of defensemen we saw move. Like we saw the Keandre Miller move, we saw the Dobson move, and then you saw LA blow their whole entire stack of money on two.
What the hell are they doing?
And it's just like so we saw like a couple of players move here, and everyone else just re-signed here. Yeah, the LA Kings. It's the Ken Holland special has hit Los Angeles with full force there, because that's a lot of money for Cody Ceci.
Dumoulin was a crazy contract. Yeah,
like
what Perry, is that, like? Kuzmenko, like they spent like $20 million on a bunch of guys that aren't going to do anything for them.
Yeah, that's over $10 million for a third pairing is really what he spent his money on. Ugh. And he got rid of Spence for absolutely peanuts. Like, I don't understand the plan there. I understand they're trying to be a tougher team to play against, and they felt like they were pushed around a little bit by Edmonton in the playoffs. But I'm like, you really think Ceci and Dumoulin are going to be the changers of that fortune? I'm not sure in a foot race I trust Brian Dumoulin against very many of those Oiler forwards one-on-one. Yikes. And then they added Howard in that trade, the Oilers did, and that just adds to the speed of that team. So good luck, Los Angeles. I'm not sure what you're doing, but faith in Ken Holland, I guess, it would be the mentor down there. Gross. Let's dive into the draft itself, Robert. Let's talk about the excitement around the Flames did in round one with both of the draft picks that they had. It felt that even though these insiders were telling us that all these draft picks were going to move and you're going to see maybe the Flames jump up and try to grab somebody, there were rumors that they tried to jump up to get that pick from Anaheim at 10 and so on and so forth. But once we got down to past like that 12-13, it really looked like the Flames had settled on a guy in their minds, and we're just waiting for him to come around to their pick. And at pick 18, they get what Craig Conroy will say is his guy all along, of course, in Cole Reshny, a center out of Victoria, now committed to the University of North Dakota in the NCAA for next season. This is a guy who is a left-handed shot. He's got okay size at 5'10", 187 pounds. He'll grow into that frame a little bit more. I wonder how much growth is still left in the height side of that thing, but it's a decent size for a guy in today's NHL. A guy who scored 26 goals in 62 games. He had a really good playoff as well, where he had what was that? I can't even do math real quick here. It was 19 points in 11 playoff games for the Royals in a bit of a short playoff run for them. What'd you make of the pick of Cole Reshny? The Flames are in love with this guy, and Twitter seems to like the pick as well. Social media was a buzz about this guy. What are your thoughts on Cole Reshny?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think it could have worked out any better for the Calgary Flames getting Cole Reshny at pick 18. He's literally exactly everything that this team needs in their prospect pool right now.
100%.
you talk about sides. I was at the Stampeders game last week and was able to, the Stamps got a sideline access and all that stuff, and I actually got to go to where all the Flames players were hanging out.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised with like how big Reshny was. Like he's actually like a bigger, like thicker guy than I expected. So I'm not overly concerned about the size there. I love the skill. Love the fact that he's a center. I like the playmaking ability. Like, I really think that down the middle, if you can find playmakers, I think that's a really good thing, especially for this Calgary Flames team. So I love it. And like you said, the playoff performance was out of control. On draft night, they showed the stat. It was points per game, like in the WHL playoffs. Reshny was second in the entire playoffs, only behind Gavin McKenna. And he actually beat Andrew Cristall, who had a remarkable playoff. He beat Berkeley Catton, who had a remarkable playoff. Like, he put up some really, really good numbers, single-handedly carried that Victoria team to the second round and to game 6 against a really good Spokane team. So, yeah, if you're a Flames fan, I think you have to be thrilled with this pick. It's not a reach. It's not a project pick. This is a guy who I think within 2 or 3 years could be playing in the National Hockey League. So, very exciting to get Cole Reshny.
The thing that sticks out to me about Cole Reshny is this is a guy who has a high motor, and he's going to not cheat you on effort at both ends of the ice. So I watch a lot of Western Hockey League, as those who know me and are long-term fans of the show. Well, the way I love my Western Hockey League guys, and so watching this guy play, it was absolutely a joy to watch, because you just up and down the ice. He doesn't have like the quickest boots in the world, but he's much like Matthew Tkachuk in that sense, where his thought process, his hockey IQ carry him a lot faster than people think they do, and he thinks the game at a really good level. You listen to all these draft experts talking about how this guy could be an impact sooner than later for the Flames in 2 or 3 years, like you mentioned there, Robert. And that should get you really excited that a guy like this is going to come along to this Flames organization. He's going to learn this game, and that at the same time, the Flames aren't going to rush him as well. They're going to let him go to his college year in North Dakota and continue to develop his game. And I think playing against bigger, stronger, older players for Cole is a really good option for him at this point of his NHL career, because you saw him dominate these junior players, and he really in the playoffs took it to another level, and he was heads and tails better than a lot of guys on the ice in both of those playoff series that he played. So it was really good to see him get picked. Really good that the Flames were able to get their man at 18.
Do you have like a player comparable for him? Like would you say he's almost like a Connor Zary was in his draft year?
I love that you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you the same thing. I like the Conor Zary comparison, but I'm going to make a different one from a different team. I think he's much like what Anthony Cirelli was coming out of junior. Plays very similar style to him, with the hockey smarts, both ends of the ice, a very responsible hockey player, and I think he's got a lot of that in his game for the Flames. I know high praise to being Cirelli, being a second line center with Tampa Bay right now and doing all the good things that he's doing. That's the kind of player that I see him being at the next level here, and the progression of his game here.
I love that. That would be incredible if he could turn into a player like that. That would be a home run pick at 18.
Right? I try not to give these guys superstar comparisons, because they're like, oh, this guy's Sidney Crosby type of thing. So I try to pick these under the radar type of guys like a Cirelli or something to say these are the style of the play that he can bring to the table. And I think that if he turns into Cirelli, this is more than a home run for the Calgary Flames, right? This is a guy who could play for a decade or two with his team and play at a high level. And I love the motor on this guy. So that's why I gave him the Cirelli comparison there.
Yeah. And if he can turn into that two-way 50-60 point guy, kind of like a second line center moving forward, that would be a massive win for the Flames.
Absolutely. People are going to say that the Flames already have a bunch of these guys that could play second and third line center, but it's just like, you could always move one of those guys to the wing, but Cole Reshny is the kind of guy that's going to project there, stay there, and be an anchor for you. Regardless of who you already have in your organization, he's going to force his way in there. He has at every level he's played at. He started on that third line in Victoria, and by the end of the season, he was leading the team in points and into the playoffs. So this guy knows what it takes to play at high level, to play his game, to be successful. And he's just going to go out there and he's going to perform for you. And he's just going to make you, he's going to force his way into your good books, because it's just kind of player that I've seen him be at the Western Hockey League level. So anything else on Cole Reshny that you want to bring to the table here before we jump to pick number 32 for the Flames?
No, let's dive into Potter here.
Craig Conroy said this is a guy that they tried to trade up to get because they were afraid he wasn't going to make it to 32. The trade didn't work out because the other team got a better package, and it still worked out in the favor for Craig Conroy. So they're very high on the guy they got at pick 32 out of the University of Arizona State University, I should say. Depending where you look, he's listed as a left winger or a center. The Flames believe he's a center. Cullen Potter, 5'10" again, same size as Cole Reshny, a little bit smaller poundage wise at 172 pounds. This guy has 9 assists, 13 goals in 35 games for the Sun Devils. This is a guy who has a lot of speed for days, great boots. When his hands catch up to his boots, I think he'll be a dynamic player. He's got great vision. I like this pick. I like this bet. This is the kind of player you take with the second of 2 first round picks that you have. Maybe a bit more of a project for Potter and what he's going to be long term, but I like this pick. I like this bet from Craig Conroy and what the Flames think that this guy can provide. What do you make of Cullen Potter when you watch him, Robert?
Yeah, just the idea behind the pick is a home run. You know, they're betting on upside, they're betting on speed, they're betting on skill. They didn't care about the size. I love this pick. I think Cullen Potter has the potential to be a top 6 forward in the NHL one day. Yeah, you know, you talked about his NCAA numbers there, and they definitely don't jump off the page to anybody, but when you take into consideration that he was a 17-year-old in the NCAA last season, playing against guys who are 19 to like 25 years old, the fact that he was able to do what he did in a new environment at such a young age was actually really impressive. And if you go back and watch some of his film and some of his highlights, like this kid's skill and this kid's speed is just off the charts. Like it's just it's so good, so good. And I could totally see this translating to, like I said, to being a top 6 forward, kind of almost like I could see like a 60 pushing 70 point forward. Almost reminds me of Matt Coronado in terms of the production. He's got an electric shot, electric skating. Like I think if this pans out and everything works and he does end up making the NHL, I could see Potter becoming like a fan favorite in Calgary. Really, really like the pick. It was not a safe pick. There is a little bit of risk here, but if it works out, I think the ceiling is very high for this player. So Craig Conroy in the scouting staff, once again, taking big swings on speed and skill, and I really like to see it. So yeah, the first 2 round picks are great. Reshny and Potter, I think are fantastic swings by the Flames. Really, really well done.
You hit it there. That like a big point that I like about this draft is you hit it right there when you talked about speed and skill. This is the bet on skill, and when you bet on skill, more times than not, it's going to pay off. Now, I think Potter at the NHL level might scoot more to be a winger than a center, just based on how he plays. But obviously, that's still a few years down the road here, and he always can develop other things to his game. For me, he's almost like a Johnny Gaudreau type player where he can use his speed to back off defenders, find with his eyes and his vision a trailing player or someone across the ice or put it in deep in the smart, whatever the smart play would be for that situation. He doesn't have the hands of Johnny Gaudreau quite yet, but I think he's along those same lines of the speed, the skill, the vision, and the hockey sense. So if he put all of that together, let his hands catch up to his feet a little bit, I think this guy has a really high upside if he can develop into what the Flames envision he can be. And if he turns out to be a top 6, even if he's just a top 6 winger, it's a home run swing. At pick 32, you don't expect these guys to be game-breaking game changers right away for you, of course. But down the line here, this guy has a chance to be developed into a nice player for the Flames. And like always, like I love to say, bet on skill because it does pay off at the end of the day. And I love what Conroy did. Just like you, I love what Conroy did here in the first round for the Flames.
Yeah, and then if we're going to talk about comparisons, one player that kind of came to mind for me was Cole Caulfield.
Ooh, I don't think that.
I don't think the shot is quite as good as Cole Caulfield because I mean he was just like an incredible scorer at the junior level, but I think like the speed, the dynamic play, the hands. I kind of and being a little bit smaller of a frame, I see kind of comparables to that. If if Potter could become that type of player, once again, home run for the Calgary Flames. And I love this drafting strategy that Craig Conroy has. And I'm almost wondering, like, when Conroy drafted in 2023, when they took Sam Honzig, I almost wonder if like that wasn't his draft, because the whole year it was Brad Treliving running those scouting meetings. It was Brad Treliving telling the scouts and Todd Button what he wants them to look for.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost wonder if that draft, like, Conroy was just like, hey, you guys continue to do what you did. You've gone about scouting players in a certain way all year. I can't change that at the last second now that I'm GM. I almost wonder if after the 23 draft, Conroy said to himself, all right, I'm going to really make my mark on this team, and we're going to draft nothing but speed and skill and upside. With obviously the odd kind of reach, the odd, size pick mixed in there. But, as a whole, I think Conroy's really starting to put his mark on this team from a drafting perspective, and it's paying off. The last two, if you read prospect experts, and you read draft grades and all that kind of stuff, a lot of prospect experts have the Flames having one of the best drafts in both 2024 and 2025. So it's really impressive, and I think this type of scouting method and betting on upside, I think, is going to pay off for this team in the long run, especially because it looks like they're not going to be picking, in the top 5 anytime soon.
Yeah, I really like that from you, actually. That's a really good point by you. I really felt at the time that Sam Honzig was a Button-esque pick. Button running the draft.
Treliving felt like kind of a little Treliving-y.
Right, it really did, and Craig Conroy really played nice in that draft by talking about how he watched Honzig a lot and he likes the player and he likes what he brings to the table, what he potentially can be, and who knows, he still can turn into something for the Flames. He's still 21 years old. He still has a long way to go here. Some development. He lost a lot of development through the COVID and the injuries and stuff like that. So who knows what he becomes for the Flames longer term? But I'm with you there. I like that it seemed like there was a philosophy switch from the Flames here to these last couple of drafts where it's like, we don't care. We're going to take the best available player that has the skill that we're looking for. And that's exactly what the Potter pick screams to me. This is a guy that they tried to trade up for, that they thought that wasn't going to be there at 32 because they thought someone else would take a swing at him. Multiple teams had multiple picks in this first round, and they jumped in there like, no, we're going to get our guy here, and they were able to get him at 32 and just bet on that skill again. So I like the approach from Craig Conroy, because skill it wins. It wins you games. That's how teams win, is you win by the skill of your players, and that's a nice little change from what we've seen from the Flames drafting in the past through the Sutter and the Treliving eras, where they love the Hunter Smiths of the world. Nice guys, but not great hockey players.
Yeah.
Let's quickly run through these next few. The Flames did make a lot of selections on the draft day, and we don't know all the. Well, Robert and I are both very forward with this. We don't know everything about all these prospects, but we can put a little bit of thought into what we've seen from other people who are the draft experts on these next guys. At pick 54, the Flames went to Theo Stockselius from Sweden. He's listed as 6'3". He's a center, 196 pounds. The guy scored 22 goals, 29 assists in 40 games. He played in 9 playoff games, had 8 goals and 8 assists. So production's there, more skill is there. I heard a comparable to an Elias Lindholm style of hockey game. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because there seems to be more. I think we've seen 2 different Elias Lindholms in the National Hockey League. What he was in Carolina to what he is now. But if he turns out to be a Lindholm-esque type player, I think that's a nice big swing for the Flames again here with this player. Any thoughts from you on Theo?
The only thing I'd add is just, there's a story that I think it was either last year or the year before, he had cancer. I think he had thyroid cancer.
I heard that, yeah.
And he was able to come through that, which is fantastic. But I think the interesting part of that story is just, I think that probably took, a lot out of him, and it might have impacted his development. So I'd be curious to see over the next, 2 to 3 years, now that he's back to 100% health, it's going to be interesting to see, how his development continues to progress. Had he not gone through his cancer scare a couple years ago, where could he have been now? Like, could he have been a first round pick? Could he have been a top 20 pick? So it's going to be interesting to see, just his development curve here. And like I said, now he's got a clean bill of health. where this goes for him. It feels like, once again, it's another high upside pick. And I will say it is nice to mix in a little bit of size, because you take a look at some of the Flames forward group, some of their younger players. Coronado's a smaller guy. Zari's a smaller guy. Battaglia, Basha, Gridden, Reshny, Potter. Like, there's some smaller guys in that forward group in terms of some of the younger players in the organization. So it's nice to add a little bit of size there. I don't think it's like the biggest deal in the world, but I do think it's there's an element of it that's important.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, you look at the Flames, and there's a lot of sub 6 foot or under guys, and which can be very effective hockey players. We've seen it very much, but you do still need those guys who are a little bit bigger to push guys around, like especially at center. You see the teams that are winning, their centers aren't exactly small lads. Like Barkov's not a small guy, so you need guys.
Bennett,
so you need guys that go up against those type of players. So I like that pick, because you're betting on some upside here. It feels more like a project type of player, but it feels like one that if you get to the end goal here, that he could be a very good depth player for you down the line here, and that's what the Flames are betting on here with Stocksalius. Now that I know how to say it, Robert, I want to say it all the time. Let's go to pick 80. This is a guy you pick because he has a good size to him, but at the same time, there is skill there, and he knows how to use his size and his boots. Maceo Phillips at pick 80, a defenseman out of the United States Development Program. Not a lot of offense from Mr. Phillips here, with only 2 goals and 1 assist in 25 games, but this is a guy who stays at home, and what I've seen online, this guy is a bruiser. He knows how to use his size. He's got good feet for a big man at 6'6" and 230 pounds. What do you make of the Maceo Phillips pick?
I haven't watched a second of this guy play, so I just kind of go based off what the scouting community said, and a lot of people in the scouting community said that the Flames kind of reached here. This feels like a size pick. This feels like one of those picks where the Flames, they see like Maceo's like a really good athlete. He's huge. He's physical. He's got a lot of tools there. The puck handling and the puck movement isn't there right now, but that can obviously be worked on. I just hope it's not a Keegan Kanzig or Hunter Smith pick. I hope it's not just them purely going for size at this spot of the draft, because I believe like guys like Cameron Schmidt were available at this pick. There were still some really good players available, and this one felt like a size pick. So we'll see how it all works out. Like I saw this guy at the Stampeders game. He just towered over everybody. Like, he's massive. He's like built like a linebacker. So yeah, obviously like the physical gifts, but it's the hockey sense, the skill, the puck moving that needs a lot of work with Maceo Phillips. And who knows, maybe he can get there one day. I certainly hope so. Not counting the guy out by any means, but it sounded like, based off people in the Sky community, that this was a little bit of a reach for the Flames.
Listening to Flames talk and hearing the scouting staff, they had Maceo Phillips a lot higher than a lot of other teams on their list. This is also, I think, maybe a product of them not having a 4th round draft pick, that they kind of like this guy. They didn't think he was going to make it to the next round after they had their next pick at 144. So it kind of feels like they reached a little bit, but they kind of had to because they didn't have the pick. I don't know how that works out, but we'll see how Maceo Phillips works out long term here. He is a big boy, and the 2 highlights I saw, he fed someone his lunch along the boards, and he had a really good back check. So I've seen two highlights of this guy play. So I don't tend to know a lot about his game, other than
I'm sold.
Not a lot of offense, and he plays defense. Someone tried to sell me that he is Robin Regeer 2.0, and I'll believe that when I see it, because Robin Regeer is hard to carbon copy in today's National Hockey League. But hey, if we get a Robin Regeer back, I'm all for it. Pick 144. This guy got a lot of play around Flames Twitter. Another feel-good story. He is the inaugural winner of the Johnny Gaudreau Award. I'm not even sure how to say his last name, Robert, on this one, but Ethan out of the Sioux Falls Stampede of the USHL, a right-handed shot. Places have him listed at center and right wing again. Again, another 5'10" guy, 180 pounds, out of New York. 24 goals, 27 assists in 44 games. What do you make of Ethan here?
Yeah, Ethan Wittenbach.
Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, don't have too much to say. It is a cool story that he won that Johnny Gaudreau Award at the USHL level. From what I've read, this is one of the home run picks of the day. The scouting community loves Ethan Wittenbach. And for the Flames to get him at 144 sounds like it was a big win. Todd Button, after draft day at his press conference, said that the Flames analytics team was really pushing the scouting staff to take Wittenbach with this pick. I guess the numbers are just off the charts for this kid, and this almost feels like it's the analytics staff's pick, which is super interesting. So we'll see how that all turns out. But yeah, by all accounts, smaller guy once again, but lots of speed, lots of skill, and you like to see that type of swing at pick 144. So I like it.
I like that he's a right-handed shot as well. We need some of those in the Flames organization as well. As long as some people tell me that handedness doesn't matter, but when you look at that Flames forward group right now, and you map out your 13 forwards, you've got 11 left shots. So let's get some right shots in there. And I kind of like that he's from the backyard of Craig Conroy, from Roslyn, New York, right around where Conroy is from as well. So that's kind of cool. Kind of a cool tie-in. Pick 176, the Flames drafted Aiden Lane, right winger from St. Andrews College. All I know about this guy is he's a right-handed shot with 6'1", 193 pounds, and he had 52 assists in 55 games, which seems pretty good for Aiden Lane and for the Flames. Another maybe project, but a guy with, you look at the stats, it screams skill, and so I think that kind of adds right into the motif that Craig Conroy's been doing in this draft. Anything to add here on Mr. Lane?
No, he'll be going to Harvard next year, so another Flames prospect in the NCAA, and I think that's the right call. I agree with you. It kind of sounds like Aiden Lane's a little bit of a project, so let him go to Harvard for a few years, get bigger, get stronger, and then hopefully bring him to the American Hockey League and then see what he's got. So, but yeah, I'm not just to say that I'm scouting Ontario high school hockey would be a lie. So I have not been watching him. And honestly, same with the 2 7th round picks. I know absolutely nothing about them, so I won't even comment on those last two ones.
All right. I'll run through them really quick here just for the listeners. Jacob Linder at pick 208. He's a defenseman out of the SHL. This is another Swedish pick. Flames only seem to use 3 nationalities when they pick draft picks nowadays. They had 1 goal, 5 assists in 39 games. He had 0 points in 2 playoff games in Sweden. Right-handed shot defenseman for the Flames. They go to Russia for their final pick. Jan Madviko from the Red Army of the MHL. He's a left shot, left winger. He had 10 goals, 14 assists in 42 games with 1 goal, 3 assists in his 6 playoff games. So Flames taking a bit of skill at the end of the draft there, it looks like, and just some long-term bets. We all know that 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders are all massive wild cards, and if they even get one NHL shift, it's a massive win for the organization. So these are all projects that the Flames needed in the system. You always talk about how bare cupboards can get and how quickly your cupboards can go bare, and you got to continue to replenish that stock. The Flames did that. They traded back into the 7th round to get Mr. Yan at 211. So the Flames really set their eyes on a few guys to stock these cupboards, to continually have these projects for their organization to work on, and a variety of different players, left wingers, right shots, defensemen. They didn't pick a goalie this year, which was a little bit surprising. It seems like they always pick one goaltender every year. I think maybe they have they have about 500 Russian goalies in the system now, it feels like. So I think maybe they're set for goalie for a while, but I just like overall the approach to the draft. It was skill, it was speed, and it was guys that they could turn into what they believe long-term they could believe can fit what they're trying to get and where they're trying to go here. So I really like the approach of the draft overall from the Flames here.
Yeah, and a lot of people agree with you. A lot of people in the scouting community had the Flames, they're doing their draft grades, giving them an A minus, B plus. Usually the Flames are ranked in the top 10 and top 5 in a lot of people's rankings. So, based off of that, I think you have to be really happy if you're a Flames fan with the work they did there.
Yeah, and it's nice to watch a draft and not be stressed out thinking, oh, just take the guy. Oh, he didn't take the guy. But take this guy. He's got the skill. Oh, no, he just took the bigger guy. It's nice to have a draft where you're like, I really like what we've done here. I really like that we picked the skill in Cole Reshny rather than the Hunter Smith in round 2 just because we liked how big he is. And it's just a nice, refreshing thing from the Calgary Flames in draft weekend this weekend. let's talk about free agency here. There was a lot of talk about what the Flames should do, what Craig Conroy should do or shouldn't do in free agency. My thoughts on free agency right off the top of my head were lose your phone, Conroy. Don't do anything stupid. And so, personally, I loved day 1 and 2 of the of free agency for the Flames, where you saw it was nothing big, nothing flashy. They didn't throw out these exuberant contracts like we saw Boston throw out there or Los Angeles throw out there. Nice, quiet start to free agency. What did you make of the approach for Craig Conroy here for the first about week now of free agency?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. You know, you look at some of the contracts that were handed out on July 1st and 2nd, and they were crazy. So the fact that the Flames were able to stay out of that and, you know, have future cap space available to them when they actually need to use it, I think is really smart. I really like the idea of re-signing Joel Hanley to the contract they did. 2 years times, I believe it was 1.75 million. You know, like I said, like you take a look at what like Cody Ceci got, what Brian Dumoulin got, some of these other veteran depth defensemen. These guys are signing like 3 or 4 year deals. They're making $3 to almost $5 million a year. And I would put Joel Hanley in like the same category as like a Dumoulin or a Ceci and some of those other guys. And the fact they got him for 2 years at 1.75, I thought was, you know, a big win for the team, because Hanley's proved that he can play with Uyghur. You know, I think that him and Zane Parekh could be a really interesting pairing as early as next season. So, and by the sounds of it, it sounds like, you know, the guys absolutely love Joel Hanley. It sounds like he's a good leader in that room. You know, Craig Conroy said his phone was blowing up after re-signing Hanley. A lot of the players had reached out and said that they were excited. And even like Mackenzie Weegar, he was on Missing Curfew the other day, and he was mentioning to the guys on that podcast how badly he wanted Joel Hanley back. So it's only for 2 years. If it doesn't work out, you can bury him in the minors, or, you know, maybe you could trade him for future considerations. You could buy him out next year. There's really no downside with this. It's really only an upside signing. And then, you know, they signed a goaltender, Ivan Persvetov. Who knows what he's going to do? He struggled during his time in the NHL, but looked like he regained his form last year in the KHL. And then a depth defenseman, Nick Cisick. I don't know anything about him. It seems like he'll be a Wrangler next year, so that's totally fine. But yeah, like you said, the best thing Craig Conroy could have done is thrown his phone into the Elbow River. You know, don't sign anybody. Don't give out any stupid contracts. With where the Flames are right now, they're in zero position to be giving out long-term deals to 29, 30, 31-year-olds. Like, it just, that literally makes no sense for where they are. So, yeah, I'm quite happy with the work that Conroy and his staff did on free agency.
His approach on free agency also said one big message to me as well, and we've heard this message a few times now from him himself, is, hey, young players, come get a job. They're available now. You're like, yes, you look at the forward group and it looks like it's already set, but none of these guys are making, like, the bottom part of the roster is making these absorbent contracts that you can't get replaced. So the opportunities are there for these guys. They didn't go out and sign the Tanner Jeannot contract that Boston gave him, which was way too much for way too long, to block these kids. They left opportunities open for these players here. Now these kids have to come in here and beat out a veteran to get their jobs, but that's part of being a hockey player. That's part of the process, the part of your next step of your career. So I really like that the Flames, they took the low-key approach. They've signed 5 guys since July 1st, and 3 of them have been re-signings. One of them was a goaltender, and one of them was a AHL defenseman. And really, like, those are easy moves to make. You're bringing guys back like Hanley and Frost that are really popular in the dressing room. They just re-signed Morton, another guy that can add depth to the organization. And these are all short-term deals. You're looking at 1 and 2 year deals only. So you're not, you know, doing these 5-year, $5 million contracts that handcuff you, or like. So I just like the approach of Craig Conroy, and a lot of people are up in arms that, you know, I saw a lot of memes on social media where like, Conroy, what are you, sleeping? Or get off your hands, Conroy.
Yeah,
but I think
it's a good thing.
I think he did the smart thing. I'd like to implore people to go back and look at what Brad Treliving did on July 1st as a Flames general manager, and go ahead if you'd like to relive Troy Brouwer days. No shot against Troy Brouwer, just the contract. the Brandon Bollig contracts, and those type of deals that you don't need to sign on July 1st. He was the one who signed Kevin Rooney July 1st, right out of the gates. Those type of moves didn't need to happen. They don't help the organization. Those are guys that you can get on July 5th and 6th and 7th if you really want one of those guys. Or heck, wait for that big, massive end of preseason where everyone tries to put everyone through waivers and just pick off a guy from that if you really want one of those type of players. So I like the approach from Craig Conroy. Didn't blow his brains out. He didn't spend all the money that was available to him, and just allowed the Flames organization to, hey, there's jobs here. Come get them, guys. And I think that's a very smart move by the general manager of the Calgary Flames here.
Yep, totally agree. I thought he did a fine job.
I think his best job, and I think he's really started to come into his own here, is how he re-signs his own guys. We saw the Kevin Bahl contract come down to 6 years at $5.35 per season. We've seen the Morgan Frost now for 2 years at $4.375 per season. We've also seen the Hanley re-signing out the 2 years at $1.75, and then obviously your AHL deals at $7.75. What'd you make of these contracts Conroy handed out to his own guys here, re-signing these guys, getting him in the fold, the extension to Kevin Bahl? I just like the bets that he's made here, and he didn't really give out absorbent contracts.
Yeah, I mean, just to start with Kevin Bahl, I thought it was a really good deal. I thought it was fair market value. I mean, originally I thought it might have been in like that $4.75 to $5 million range, but a little over $5 million is not a bad thing. I know you and I were both big fans of Kevin Bahl. I think he's a long-term top four defenseman, brings size, which I think championship teams have shown that you need size on the back end. I think he's got a really good stick. I think his puck moving got better as the season went on. And he's pretty. He's not like a guy who's just gonna like throw huge open ice hits like Nikita Zadorov. But when you're battling for a puck with him, when you're battling in front of the net with him, he's there. So like he's physical in that regard, which I really like. So and he's gonna be 25 years old to start next season. They get him through his 25 to 30-year-old seasons, his prime of his career. I think it's really smart. And man, that Jacob Markstrom trade is just looking better and better. Hey.
Yeah,
they get Cole Reshny and Kevin Bahl for, Jacob Markstrom, who didn't want to be in Calgary anymore, who only had 2 years left on his deal, who was pretty mediocre in New Jersey last year. That trade is looking really good. So I'm a huge fan of the Kevin Bahl signing. I thought it was really smart. I know there's some people around the hockey world that said that it was too much, but they clearly don't watch the Calgary Flames, because I think anybody who watches the Flames on a regular basis would agree that Bahl is an important piece moving forward, and I think he's clearly a top four guy. I mean, more of like a number 4 than like a number 3, if that makes sense. But I think it's a really smart signing by them. I'm assuming you probably think the exact same thing.
Yeah, it was funny too, because I had people come to me and they're like, "Isn't 6 years a little bit long for that type of guy?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're just about to turn 25. You're buying all of his prime years. You're buying UFA years." And
I was hoping it'd be 8, to be totally honest.
And yeah, it's like, and so he turns 30 at the end of this deal, and it's like, okay, so if he still has the foot speed and he's still thinking of the aim high level, there's nothing wrong with another 2-year deal at the end of this or whatever it might be. So I think it's a smart bet. And the worst thing that happens is his game falls off around 29. And so, okay, we have to live the last year of this contract with maybe a higher cap hit than you want. But then you realize the cap by then is probably going to be $120 million. And so you really don't care about it that much. So I think this is fair market value. I like the 6 years. I would have loved to see a 7 or 8th year, to be honest, just like you do it, Robert. But you got all the prime years of Kevin Bahl. You've got what you want from this guy. He's a guy who's going to steady a second pairing for you. He's a guy that's going to be able to play with possibly the guy like Parekh or Brustevich and allow those guys to play their game when they get to the National Hockey level. And so when you have these high octane offensive defensemen, you need those steadying presence back there. That's how Taves works with Makar so well in Colorado, just the calming presence beside your big superstar. You need those guys. So he's not flashy like a Parekh. He's not going to put up points like a Parekh might put up points at this level. but he's going to be so good for you. He's going to be a steady presence for you. And this is the guy who eventually, I think down the road, could possibly wear a letter for this team. You throw an A on his jersey. He's that type of guy. I think he's got leadership qualities to him. Love this signing from the Flames. And I'm okay paying a little over $5 million because you bought UFA years and all the prime years of Kevin Bahl.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's a great point you just made about how he could be a long-term partner with the Zane Parekh or Hunter Brusevich. That's another reason why this makes so much sense. He's literally the perfect partner for those types of players. Yeah, that's a great point by you.
Yeah, it's like all of your really good defensive pairings that are together for multiple years. It's like you just put them out there and you forget about it, right? Because they're just so good together. They work well together. And that's what I hope we have here with Bahl and whoever it might be beside him. Like, even if it is Brustevich, I think that's just a really good – it's a nice thing to have, one we haven't had here for a long time. I would argue here. What about the Morgan Frost one? This one seemed to get a lot of play on social media about, well, I wish it was a longer deal. I wish it was a little bit less on the AAV. What is Morgan Frost? What'd you make of this deal for Morgan Frost, and what side of it the conversation you come out on here?
Yeah, I thought it made nothing but sense for both the team and the player. Because from a Frost perspective, he needs to prove what he is at the NHL. I think he's shown that he shows glimpses of high-end skill and some decent playmaking, some good work on the power play, especially with entries. There's lots of aspects to his game that you like, but at the same time, he's just so inconsistent with his production. He doesn't battle very hard. He's not the hardest guy to play against. He's not a great defensive player. So, he's got a lot to prove here over the next 2 years. And then kind of from a Flames perspective, it's sort of a similar thing. It's like, can you really commit 5-6 years to this guy when you truly don't really know what he is? Like, is he a 35-point small center, or is he going to be a 50-point guy that can play in your power play and penalty kill and win draws? Like, you just don't really know. So to give him 2 years to show what he is, I think makes a lot of sense. And then also, yeah, once again, from Frost's perspective, it walks him to free agency. So it's good for him. If he can have a couple big years, he's going to get paid at 28 years old. And for the Flames, it's like, if he does have a couple good years, then you're the team that has his rights and you can sign him. So I think it's a smart deal for both sides. And I got no problem with it. I really don't know what to expect from him next year, because, like I said, I could see him putting up 50, 55 points and being a difference maker, or I could see him being a 30-point guy that struggles. Like, I really don't know what to expect. So this is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I think what you just said there is exactly how Conroy's approaching it too. It's like he slid this contract along the table and be like, I need you to show me something. And I think he gave him that second year to show a little bit of faith in the player, gave him the money for the 2 years, and just said, come on, show me. We believe in you as a player. We think you can be this type of player for us. You can be a long-term fit at the second line center or whatever you might want to put Morgan Frost as long-term. But we need to see something from you. So this is a really good show me deal. And there's nothing stopping the Flames from extending him next year, halfway through the year, if he's had a really good year and a half. Or there's nothing wrong with him trading him at next year's trade deadline if things haven't gone to how the Flames would like it to go. So this, I think, is a smart contract for both sides. It doesn't put the Flames in a corner. It gives Morgan Frost all the freedom to show the Flames what he wants, and it's all in his hands now. And if he goes out here for 2 years and absolutely smashes it out of the park, I'm sure Craig Conroy will have no problem in paying this guy when he's 28. Here's your contract. Here's your money, because we've seen what you bring to the table. So I'm with you on this, Robert. I'm not sure what to expect of Morgan Frost, because you see flashes of his brilliance on the power play and how he enters the zone. He's really good face-off wise. He can make some great plays. And then every once in a while, he just goes away for a couple of games at a time. You're just like, come on, Morgan. We know it's there. Show it to us. So this contract just screams, show me deal, prove it to me, and make me pay you in 2 years. And I really hope that's what he does for the Flames, because if he's doing that, that means the Flames are having success. And if the Flames are having success, then we're happy fans watching the Flames have success. So let's see something from you there, Morgan Frost.
Yeah, and then So today I wrote an article. Basically, it was about Connor Zary, and I think one of the reasons why this Frost contract is important and why it needs to work is, when the Flames acquired him, because there's Kadri, because there's Backlund, and now there's Frost, you've basically taken a center spot away from Connor Zary. So, if you're the Flames, like, you really need Morgan Frost to work out, because if it's a kind of a failed project, you just lost 2 years of center development for Connor Zary as well.
Good point.
It's this Farabee Frost trade. I'm so conflicted on it, because part of me is like, yes, there is upside. Farabee could be a 50-point guy. Frost could be a 50-point guy. Could Farabee turn into the next sort of Blake Coleman style of player? Could Frost be a second-line center for this team moving forward? But then there's another part of me that's like, the Flames are spending $10 million on these guys. Farabee did not look very good, and the Flames have a million wingers as is. He makes a lot of money. I don't know. I don't think he's like a great defensive player. And then there's Frost. He did not produce in Calgary. Like, the production was terrible. I don't think he's a very good defensive player. So I'm just wondering, I'm like, where is the upside? And then, like, when their contracts are up, they're going to be 28 and 29. Then you have to re-sign them into their 30s. It's like, I don't know, man. This Frost Farabee trade is really interesting. They give up a second-round pick. They give up on Peltier. Kuzmenko was just starting to feel it when they traded him. And once, like I said, now you got $10 million tied up in these two players. It's interesting. It's going to be really, really fascinating to see what these two guys do next year, because the trade could work out. It could be fantastic if they're both 50-point guys, or it could be a train wreck. And there's a lot on the line here for these two players. I in my opinion, heading into next season, the most interesting storyline to watch is probably these two guys and how this is all going to work out.
Yeah, it's a very big show me for both guys. Absolutely. Like, Farabee's buyout candidate next year if he has another year like he just had. Like, that's where his production. We've talked about that on the podcast before. Frost could become trade bait next year if he doesn't perform. This coming up season here. So, like, these guys both have an opportunity here to kind of change the narrative a little bit around them and to be productive members of this team. I don't buy the after a trade, you've got to give these guys, they've had their time, right? They've been here since January. Like, they've had their time to fit in and to get acclimated to the area. This is a fresh coat of paint here. Do something with it here. Let's get going here. Let's show what you're made of. Show why you're making $5 million here. And don't show us why Tortorella got fed up with you. Because that's really why these guys have been traded out of Philadelphia is they were frustrating players for Tortorella to deal with. And but say what you want about Tortorella, but you moved these guys, came in here, they removed 4, you gave up on a young player to bring these guys in here. Now you need them to show you something, because it's really what we're trying to get to the next level here for the Flames. You got a goaltender who's come in here and shown that he can be a number 1 in the National Hockey League. You have a really exciting defensive prospect coming up to join this group. You got a forward group that has a lot of veterans who will this team to win, whether fans 1 and 2 or not. Kadri and Backlund and Coleman are going to drag this team along like they did this last year. Get on board and show us that you're part of the solution here, or they could both be on their way out of here. And we're really questioning that trade from Conroy. And as Flame fans love to do, always second guessing what the general manager does. So,
yeah,
good point by you. While we're talking about Connor Zary, what do you make of him not having a contract yet? Do you think that there's a hiccup there, or do you expect something to get done relatively quickly here?
I mean, I'd be surprised if something doesn't get done. Like, I think this is such an easy negotiation. Like, to me, it's just like, give the guy 2 years. Give him anywhere between 3.25 and 3.5 million and call it a day. But by the sounds of it, it sounds like the Flames are wanting to get Zary closer to 3. And I think Zary probably wants to get closer to 4. So there might be a pretty big gap there. Like, over a 2-year contract, say they're $1 million apart. I mean, that's $2 million. It's a big deal for Connor Zary. So yeah. I could understand why they're digging their feet in. But at the same time, Zary really hasn't proved anything at the NHL level yet. Yes, he had a really nice rookie season. I thought last year, from an eye test perspective, I thought he was one of their better forwards. So, the potential is there for him to be a really good player for this team. But when you take a look at the output, that hasn't really been there. So I could see why the Flames are pushing for 3. I can see why Zeri's pushing for 4. I get both sides of it, but it's just like, can you not come together in the middle and, sign a 2-year, $3.5 million deal? To me, it just, I don't know, that just seems to make sense. But, if it feels like both sides are really digging in right now, which I don't really understand, to be totally honest.
Yeah, I mean, neither. I'm a little surprised it's not already done. Like, it'll get done because the Flames really like Connor Zary. Zary likes being a member of the Flames. It'll get done. I'm a little surprised it's not done already, and it'll be interesting to see who. I don't want to say bends or first or who blinks first, but kind of who says, okay, let's just get this done so we can play and we can show it. Because Connor Zary is in a very similar spot for me that Morgan Frost is. You got to come in here and show that your rookie season wasn't a fluke, that what we saw at times last year before you got injured was not a fluke, that this is the kind of player you are at the National Hockey League level. Long-term listeners of this podcast and my previous show will know how big of a fan I am of this guy. But he's got to show up and he's got to continually prove it like everybody else does and show that he can be in here. Maybe he can beat out Frost to be a center. Who knows? But you got to get that contract and get into camp here.
And just get it done. Like, don't make this a distraction for Connor Zary this offseason.
Don't do the Andrew Mangiapane thing.
Totally. Like, he cannot miss a single day of training camp. And this summer, like, when he's training, like, the last thing he needs is to have this contract over his head. So it's just like, both sides just need to come together and get something done. Like, this feels like a really easy negotiation. And, we've never been part of contract negotiations like this, obviously, but, it just feels like it's so obvious. A 2 years times 3.25 or 2 years times 3.5. Get it done. Give Connor Zary some peace of mind. Make sure he comes to training camp ready to go with no distractions. And because this is a massive season for him. Massive.
And speak for yourself on the contract thing. I play NHL 25. I do contracts all the time.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I don't just give them all the money because I don't want to have to worry about the bad contracts. I'm not that kind of general manager.
That's a great point. I really should have thought of that before I said that.
We'll see how that goes with that thing. Okay, let's switch topics a little bit here, and I'm going to try my best not to go in some long tangent rant here, but I'm going to ask you a question here. Craig Conroy, Rasmus Andersson, there's a bit of a tug-of-war going on. Just want to ask, is Craig Conroy being too nice right now with the Rasmus Andersson situation?
No. I don't know. I don't think he's being too nice. This whole situation is bizarre to me. Like, people are freaking out over it for absolutely no reason. For Rasmus Andersson, for him to say, hey, I don't want to sign a long-term extension in a city that I've never played in, is more than okay. That's his right. He's allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, people are getting pissed off that he won't sign in LA. Well, take a look at the Kings. Like, I feel like once Kopitar and Doughty are done there, they're on a collision course with mediocrity. It's also very expensive to live there. Depending on your politics, a lot of these, hockey players, they probably don't want to live in California because they make so much money. The tax situation's not great. Like, if you're Anderson, why would you want to sign right away? So for people to be getting upset at him for that, I think makes absolutely no sense. And then from a Flames perspective, being mad at them, yes, you and I talked about this, the entire season, that Rasmus Andersson should have been traded as far back as last summer, maybe even a little bit before that. I've been writing about this for like 2 years now. So if you're the Flames, if you wanted to get the biggest return, yes, the time to do that was before this offseason, because this whole extension conversation doesn't even happen if you trade him at the deadline last year. If you trade him last offseason, it's not even a thing. But because they held on to him and because they wanted to sneak into the playoffs, the return for Anderson is going to be not quite as high as they want. And we saw that at the draft here. The only way they're going to get a crazy good return is if Andersson re-signs at one of these teams long term, and he doesn't want to do that. And that's totally fine. That's his decision. So now the Flames are just in a position where they're going to trade him as a rental, and that's totally fine. I don't understand why people are so worked up about this. It's like players get traded as rentals all the time in the NHL. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, if the Flames could get, a first and a second for him, that's great. If they could get a high-end prospect and another draft pick for him, that's great. They're not going to get the home run Elias Lindholm package because Craig and the staff waited too long. And it is what it is. but they're still going to get a really good return for him. They're still going to trade him. Rasmus Andersson can only say no to 6 teams. You have 25 other teams around the league that you can trade him to. So there's nothing wrong with this whole situation. It's just like a normal trade situation with a guy who's going to be a pending UFA. But people are freaking out over it, giving Rasmus Andersson hell for no reason. The only criticism I think you could really give is like the Flames are just holding on to him for too long because now the value's not there. So, but in the grand scheme of things, he's going to get traded. They're going to get a solid return for him because of his contract, and he's a right shot D. And things are going to be okay. It's just they're not going to get the home run that you would hope that you could have got a year or two ago. So this whole situation, I just think, is bizarre with how the fans are reacting to it and how media is reacting to it. Like, this is just a normal rental type of deal. Like, I don't understand what's wrong with that.
Fans have become spoiled, I think, a little bit here. They've been spoiled on how we're in these negotiations a lot more. We learn more about how these trade processes work. We're behind the curtain a little bit more, and people they like to look at the long term, which is fine, which is great. I do as well, and they think that in 2 years Rasmus Andersson's UFA, we should trade him right now. Well, that's not how the NHL works. You've signed this player for this X amount of years because you think for these amount of years he can be an effective player for your hockey team, and last year we talked about maybe trading Rasmus Andersson, but they were always in that playoff chase. And we know teams in a playoff chase are not trading out assets. They're going to bring in guys or stand pat to try to make the best or take advantage of a situation. We see that all across the league. It's not just the Flames. And so that's why I think it's important the Flames, end the saga before the training camp next year, because they don't want to turn into that same situation where you're at the trade deadline and you're in a playoff spot. Well, can you really trade Rasmus Andersson? That's a different conversation, of course. But for right now, Rasmus Andersson's doing what he contractually was given by the Flames and agreed to by saying, I'm not signing long-term here because I don't have to sign long-term with Los Angeles. I don't have to sign long-term with whatever it is, Dallas or Tampa Bay or whoever else you want to throw in the mix here, right? It doesn't matter who you want. Where I think, and why I asked is Conroy being too nice, is I wonder what Conroy's approach should be now for the Flames here. He's clearly going to have to sell Rasmus Andersson as a rental. And so this Rasmus Andersson's holding the Flames hostage thing is crap. I think Conroy just needs to take a different approach here and just be like, okay, guys, I need to move this player. I'm going to move him, say, by August 1st, send me your best offers and sell him as a rental. It doesn't matter where Rasmus Andersson wants to end up playing long-term. If he wants to go play in Vegas like the rumor has been, well, great. You're a free agent next offseason. Go ahead and sign there if they can fit you in their cap and enjoy the hotness of Vegas. Enjoy their unloyalty to the hockey players. Go ahead. But for the Flames, and you got to look at this from a Flames perspective here and from Conroy's perspective here, is you have all these other teams where you can trade Rasmus Andersson and he cannot say no. So I think Conroy isn't being too nice here, but at the same time, he needs to kind of, this we can hold on to Rasmus to the season thing. I think that's the mistake Craig Conroy's making, that, we're comfortable taking Rasmus into season. We're comfortable holding on to him till the trade deadline. I think that's where you're asking for trouble if you're Craig Conroy, because if you're in a playoff spot or if there's an injury or a couple of other different options that could be out there, just will affect your process. So I think Conroy needs to be a little bit more straightforward here and be like, listen, we got to trade this guy. We got to get rid of the distraction, and we got to start fresh here as the Calgary Flames heading into training camp, because holding on to Rasmus into camp, they say they're okay and comfortable with it. I just think that's a huge, massive mistake. Trade him as a rental, bring back a prospect and a high draft pick, and move on with making this Calgary Flames team better in the long term and in the long run. And if you're hating on Rasmus for exercising what he contractually negotiated, well, come on, like grow up a little bit, because this is a grown adult making a grown up decision based off a contract that he was given by the team that you still happen to cheer for. It's not his fault. It's
put yourself in his shoes.
100%.
Would you want to go sign with a random team, a year out? You've never experienced living there. You don't know the guys. You don't know what it's like to be a member of that team. You haven't done all the research to see what their outlook is over the next 8 years while you're going to be playing there. there's no reason to hate on Rasmus Andersson for this. Like, I think it's crazy the way people are treating him right now.
Yeah, like if my boss came to me tomorrow and says, "Hey, John, we need you to go start making deliveries in Winnipeg. You got to go now for 2 years." Like, well, no, my contract states I'm Southern Alberta. Like, this is where I live. This is where I want to be. This is where I signed up to have a job here. Is because I want to deliver here. I don't want to move to Winnipeg. That's like. So it like absolutely put yourself in Rasmus's shoes. He's doing nothing wrong. I think what it all comes down to in this situation, and what frustrates me the most about all this online stuff, is everyone just piles on everyone else's tweets or everyone else's posts on Instagram or everyone else's Blue Sky or wherever you are, and it just goes and it's just a big ball of hate. It comes down for me is Conroy. Make a decision, trade him as a rental, and let's get rid of the distraction because your focus should be on Zane Parekh. What's Brustevich? Who's going to pair with Mackenzie Weegar? Can Suniev take a spot away? How high can Coronado's point total be next year? Those are the things that we should be focusing on as fans, as a coach, as a general manager, not how long are we going to have Rasmus for before we have to trade him and make a tough in-season decision here. So just let's just get it done, get it traded. And I just don't like the idea of going into season with him, as comfortable as Conroy might say he is with that. It just, for me, that's just distraction.
Yeah, and he might just be saying that for public relations reasons,
100%,
for
100%.
sending messages to other teams around the league, like, as leverage. Who knows? But yeah. I think his strategy with Andersson was going into the draft and a little bit after the draft, it's find the biggest and best trade package possible. And in order to get the biggest and best, Andersson would have to re-sign with that team. Clearly, he's not going to do that unless it's Vegas. So then shift your strategy. Say, okay, we're not going to be able to get the home run, but let's hit a double. Let's hit a triple here. We can take a little bit less because Rasmus isn't going to re-sign with them. We're still going to get a good return. We're going to get a draft pick. We'll get a probably a decent prospect, and more potentially. And then we'll get rid of the distraction for this season and have only guys that are going to be there. And there's not going to be this, trade deadline BS cloud hanging over the team all year. Just get it done. And like I said, you can trade him to 24 teams across the league. Rasmus is not holding them hostage by any means. He has a 6-team no trade list. How is that holding them hostage in any way, shape, or form? He can go to frickin' 3/4 of the league. Like Craig Conroy, he can trade him almost anywhere. It's not like Andersson saying, like, you know what, I don't want to go to Carolina. Like, I'm not going to re-sign in Carolina. Well, all right, well, I'm not going to do a deal with Carolina then. That's not how it's working. It's like you can still trade him to Carolina and still get a good return. And he can't do anything about it because his trade clause only covers 6 teams. It's just like, this whole situation just makes me want to smash my head through a wall. It's driving me crazy hearing all like the different opinions on it. It's like, just overall, Andersson is not a bad guy. He is doing everything in his right. Like you said, contractually, he can say that he wants to re-sign with the team or not. He's allowed to do that. He only has a 6-team no trade list. Conroy can trade him to 3/4 of the league. And number 3, he's going to be a rental. And you trade defensemen, you trade forwards, you trade these guys as rentals all the time, and you can still get good returns for them. So the whole situation, I just think, is completely overblown. I've never experienced a Flame story like this where, common sense has just gone completely out the window with a lot of people talking about this whole situation. Like, it's wild. It's just super simple. Rasmus can, like I said, he can say yes or no to extensions. He'll be a rental, and that's totally fine. There's literally nothing wrong with that. It's just you won't get the super max value return that you could have got at last deadline or the offseason prior. And, the Flames probably should have traded him back then, but, ownership and management, they wanted to make the playoffs, and they were pretty short-sighted. They want to get into the 8th seed and lose in the first round. And to get there, I think you needed Rasmus Andersson on the roster. So, yeah, the whole situation is just crazy. I hope he gets moved between now and like September 1st, because like you said, the last thing you need is that distraction heading into training camp, because that's going to be the whole talk of training camp. That's all the reporters are going to ask about. That's all people are going to be talking about. So just get it out, get rid of the distraction, move on. Let's go.
we're gonna have another repeat of that Elias Lindholm at the beginning of the season, where after he asked out, where he awkward intro at the golf tournament, and then it hums the word after that, and it's just gonna be awkward around the player until he's moved. So for his sake and the team's sake, move him along here, and let's just pooper get off the pot with it. That's my thinking on it.
It's just so bizarre, man. I've never experienced anything like this.
It's absolutely wild because I've stopped responding to Rasmus Andersson stuff on Twitter and such, because you just read the comments and you read how people pile on other people's posts, and you're just like, this has just gone off to left field, and now we're painting how bad Rasmus Andersson is as a Flame. Like, this has been a good hockey player for a long time for the Flames, a guy they developed from a second rounder who was overweight and didn't have a work ethic to him, to a player who works pretty damn hard. Yes, he had a tough season last year, but he worked pretty damn hard for the Flames for a long time here, and it's just time to move along. Like, that's all it is, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to move along, nothing wrong with the Flames moving on from the player. Just the vitriol and the hate and the I'm going to boo Rasmus Andersson. It's gone crazy, and social media is just something else all the time. But with this topic, it's gone to another level. It's quite interesting.
Just to finish it off, like, if you don't like Rasmus Andersson because he said, that comment at the end of the season about the 10% fans who want to rebuild, I totally get that. Like when we did a podcast after that garbage bag day, and that 10% comment from Rasmus, like, I went off. I thought that was a bullshit comment from him. It kind of soured me to the player a little bit, because, like, you're right. Like, he's been a really good player for the Flames for a long time. He's been a really good person. But, like, that comment at the end of last year, basically saying that the fans are idiots and losers and all this stuff, I thought that was complete crap. So that kind of soured me on him. This whole trade situation has not. Like, this whole trade situation, it's just him doing what's best for him and his family long term. It's not Rasmus Andersson's responsibility to get the Flames the biggest trade package in return for him. That's not on him. That's on Craig Conroy. And he missed the boat on getting that trade return. And now he's just going to have to settle for a little bit less. Andersson in this trade situation is not in the wrong whatsoever. People should not be upset with him. They should not boo him over this. But, like, if you have a different opinion on Rasmus because of, like, the 10% comment or the way he played last year, that's totally fine. Sure, I think that's totally fair game. But to hate him for this whole trade situation, I think is unfair, unjust, and quite honestly, just pretty silly, to be totally honest.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Well put, Robert. That's not the only trade that the Flames have been rumored to be making or wanting to be part of, and this is kind of a broader topic here. Bowen Byram's name's floated out there, and what a division this name has been on social media. Flames have been linked to trying to trade for him. St. Louis is in the mix for him as well. What are your thoughts on Bowen Byram and a possible fit in Calgary?
Well, they definitely need young left shot defensemen. There's no doubt about that. I'd say organizationally, outside of center, left D is a major priority for this franchise. So, in theory, if you were able to acquire a 23 or 24-year-old left shot defenseman, I think it makes sense. Bowen Byram in particular, I'm not so convinced that's the right move based off of the demands that he's asking for in terms of ice time. Like Darren Drager said the other day on Barn Burner that Bowen Byram thinks he's a number one defenseman. So if you're going to bring him in, he's going to have that attitude that, hey, I should be given 24, 25 minutes a night. I should be given all this opportunity. And then, supposedly it's going to take like over $9 million to sign this guy, even though over the last few years he has not shown that he's a $9 million defenseman, not even close to it. So, for Byram specifically, and for how much you're going to have to pay him, how much it's going to cost to acquire him, I don't think it makes sense for the Calgary Flames right now, especially if it's going to include that 2026 first-round pick. Like, Boomer on Barn Burner said the other day that his understanding was that the Calgary Flames were more than okay with offer sheeting him, but they just couldn't come to a number with Byram. And that number would have been, it would have included a first-round pick. So, if that's true, and this is all hypothetical, if the Flames were willing to give up their 2026 first round pick for Bowen Byram, I think they're nuts. I think they would be absolutely insane. They should put Conroy and the management team in a mental institution. That would be the most wild thing they could possibly do, is giving up their lottery ticket in the Gav McKenna draft for a defenseman that's asking for way too much money and too much ice time that he hasn't earned. Like, if that ends up happening, fans should be so pissed off, so upset. But we'll see. The one other thing I'll just say is, if they could acquire Byram using roster players, that would be totally fine. Like, if you could move out, I don't know, Joel Farabee and, another forward or something like that, and then, second round picks or whatever, that would make more sense. But like, if you're going to be giving up first round picks and top prospects, that makes no sense for this team. So I am very much against spending a ton on Bowen Byram. Like I said, if it's roster players and a couple mid-round picks, I got no problem with it. But if you're giving up those high leverage assets, I think it's pretty much a fireable offense right away. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it.
I like the idea of a Bowen Byram type defenseman. If you're getting Bowen Byram that played for the Avalanche when they won the Stanley Cup, where he was second pairing minutes, he wasn't counted on to be the guy. He was supporting the guy in Makar. He was playing a role. Then yeah, I would be all in on trying to make a trade for this guy, and we'll talk. You can talk about the package all you want, but it would cost to grab this guy. But my problem with bringing in Byram right now is what he's asking for and how entitled it comes across. Like, I deserve number one minutes. That's one of the reasons Colorado moved him out as well. If you remember back to when he was traded to Buffalo, it was the demands of a contract, the demands of playing time. If he can put his ego aside a little bit here and realize exactly what he actually is, which is a second pair defenseman, a left shot, a guy who can move the puck, who's got good wheels. Let's be honest, his decision-making can be suspect at times. He's a little slow along the boards with his decision-making. So this isn't a guy that screams number one defenseman to me. This isn't a guy that screams, give me 26 minutes a night type of guy for me. And this is definitely not a guy that screams, I deserve $9 million over 8 years is the contract rumor. Definitely not. But a defenseman that can fit on your second pairing, can move the puck, can skate well, and fit in your age range, that sounds like heaven for the Flames. That sounds like something they should try to be doing here. And I'm sure Conroy is trying to do here. I just don't know if Bowen Byram's that guy, based on everything else that comes with him. It seems like he brings along unneeded baggage that he doesn't need to be bringing along. It's a little confusing of why he thinks he deserves all this kind of stuff, because he doesn't show it. And so if the Flames would go out and say a 26 first-round draft pick and Connor Zary and something else to bring this guy in, it's not going to go over well for sure. But if they can find a guy that's like him, I think they missed the boat on the Nicholas Hague thing. I think that would have been a really good one, a guy that they should have targeted, brought in, like rumored they were part of. That's the kind of guy that I'm looking at here. It's go to somebody else who's similar, but you can count on to not be, it's a harsh word, a bit of a diva about some certain things here. So the idea of a Bowen Byram type defenseman, I really like, and I think the Flames really need one, but I just don't know if that's going to be Bowen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the right guy. I don't think it's the right time. I don't think it's the right fit. And like I said, if it's going to take that 2026 first round pick to get him, it is not worth it. Like, could you not see a world where this Flames team is in the lottery, having, anywhere from like a 20 to 10% chance of Gav McKenna? Like, I personally do. I can totally see that happening.
We'll have that conversation on this pod, no doubt, what we think the Flames happen, but it takes one injury on your back end to a big player like a Uyghur. It takes a regression from Wolf, or it takes Nazem Kadri being a 35 goal scorer. It's very easy to see the Flames falling into the top 8 of this next year's draft.
Absolutely, 100%. So why risk that? Like, could you imagine how stupid Craig Conroy is going to look if they traded that 2026 first round pick and it ends up being, it doesn't even have to be first overall. If it ends up being like a top 3 pick, they're going to look ridiculous.
I'd say anything in that top 8.
Yeah.
If anywhere in there, even a top 10. If it's any of those picks, I think it looks absolutely stupid.
So if they do trade that pick, it'll have to be top 10 protected. There's no doubt about that. But then if it's top 10 protected, that probably means that they'll have to give up their 2027 first round pick, and they could even be worse than that season. And that's the Landon Dupont draft, and there's a bunch of good players available there. So it's just like, if you're Conroy, hold on to your first round picks for the love of God. If you want to acquire that left shot defenseman, use Vegas's first rounder. Use other assets. Do not use your own first round picks.
For heaven's sake, you got 1,000 wingers. Use a winger. Package a winger and a second rounder and go out and get somebody else. There are players out there that you can go get that are going to cost you way less than Bowen Byram. Like you're asking a first plus for Byram plus a $9 million a year contract. That's a lot for one player. And when you're trying to build a roster and turn over a roster and be a contender, those assets that you would spend are the exact assets you need to help build your team. We talk about it all the time. You build through the draft and supplement through trades. They're not at the supplement portion of the program here yet, in my opinion.
No, they're not. But they feel they are, but they're not in reality for sure.
Thanks, Edwards.
It does feel like there's a push from up top to become a playoff team next year. That's for sure.
We'll get into that on another podcast because that'll get me ranting. If you want to hear my rant on Murray Edwards, you can tune into the last podcast, episode 37. I kind of teed off on the ownership of the Flames organization. Anything else on Bowen Byram or the Flames defensive situation that you wanted to bring up on the show here, Robert?
I wish Jordan Spence was a left shot.
Even if he wasn't a left shot, I'd say bring him in. I would bring him in anyways. You have...
Well, the right's too crowded, though, is it not?
You could play Uyghur on the left. You could play Bahl on the left. He did it last year at times. I'm sure Brestevich or Perek can play on the left.
I push back on that. I don't like Uyghur on the left. Like I hear lots of people talk about that.
He's way better on the right. Absolutely. I agree with that. He can play the left in a pinch, though, if you do need it. But I just go with the Spence. There's skill there, and so I always bet on skills. That's how I approach it.
That's fair.
But yeah, if he was a left shot, that would have been magic.
Yeah, that was a great move by Ottawa. They barely even have to give up anything for him. That was a very smart trade.
It was a theft, is what it was. I wish, on one hand, I wish we knew LA Kings people, because I'd love to be on an LA Kings podcast and just ask the question, what are your thoughts on Ken Holland and what he's done for Los Angeles? Because he certainly put his mark on that team early here in the offseason.
Yeah, if you want to get somebody screaming at you for 30 straight minutes and losing their minds, then probably talk to an LA Kings fan. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm sure that Twitter's going over very well. Awesome. Robert, what's coming up from you on flamesnation.ca, and where can the folks find you and your work?
I like I said, I wrote an article that's coming out today, so Thursday. It's about how the Flames, they can't make the same mistakes with Connor Zary that they made with Sam Bennett. So I just kind of explored, what happened with Bennett, where it went wrong, the similarities between the two situations, and then how they can kind of avoid that with Zary. Because, this is something we could maybe talk about in a different episode, but just overall, I do see a lot of similarities between Zary and Bennett in terms of usage, in terms of not having a role, all that kind of stuff. I think the Flames aren't careful here. They could ruin Connor Zary. So I just kind of wrote about that. So hopefully people will read it and like it and find it interesting.
Well, you'll at least get one view because I'll read it for sure. That sounds very interesting.
You're my number one fan. I appreciate it.
Find Robert at Ring of Fire CGY on social media. I'm Vintage Johnny 84, and as always, the show is at Red Mile Rundown. Thank you so much for making us a part of your podcast rotations and sticking with us through the summer. I forgot to tell Robert, so he's hearing this for the first time as well. Last week's episode was the highest rating episode we've had since the calendar flipped to 2025. So a bit of a surprise on the numbers. So we appreciate all of you for the downloads and listening to a hockey podcast in summer. We'll be back at you soon here with another episode of the Red Mile Rundown. In the meantime, enjoy your summer and get out there. Lots of sunscreen as you enjoy the sunshine. Talk to you later.